So, welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and actually to a battle that, well, this is a scenario, because now one of the best things I think about this hotfix is the fact that the tools to make maps and scenarios are actually working again. So it means that new maps and scenarios like this are going to be far more common, I think, which is definitely a good thing, because maps like this that people obviously put a lot of time and effort into are always a good time indeed. And this one was sent to me and built, I believe, by Eclipse 2500 of the Dark Cloud, so good to see that. And I actually have reasonably decent expectations that this one isn't going to be a crash fest like some of the sort of more city-esque battles like this could have been in the past, mainly because this has the look to one of the more standardized settlements that they used, and he's sort of built around it a decent map to go with it rather than it being quite dry. So I actually think that this one should be reasonably stable, unless he has snuck a bunch of fences underneath all these buildings, in which case it could be quite painful as the battle goes along, but I doubt it, because these maps are always pretty decent in the past. But we'll have a quick run around of this map to start with. So obviously you can see here this city in the middle, which is very similar to some of the cities that you will see in something like a standard 3rd Age campaign, obviously in the DOL Gondorian style, as we are on the south coast of Middle-earth here. DOL ERGOTH is the name of this particular settlement, and up here, where all the well-to-do people live, we have this keep as well as a sort of secondary thing that the attackers are going to have to siege down on. I think actually you can try and circumvent the city if you want and go straight for this area up on top of the hill. I don't think that would be a particularly good idea, because then you'll be in between the army that occupies the noble living quarters, shall we say, and the more standard settlement for the peasants. You'll be in between both of the armies that are going to be defending each one, so I doubt that the attackers will gun straight for the hill, and they will probably try to take the city first, even if that will still probably put them in range of some of the archers on top of that hill, but very, very decent. There's a few ways up and around as well, I believe. So there's a ford over here that you can use to take a direct route as well, which is interesting actually. You probably could, Froggy at the very least could probably come around and attack up there right from the beginning, but we shall see. And of course, you know, there's a lot of ways. It's a very open settlement. There's a lot of ways up onto the walls, which is often a problem for the defenders. If there's a lot of surface area to cover, especially seeing as there are only 2 armies down here, and they could find themselves getting attacked by 5, it could be pretty grisly for them. But if they can keep their organisation, it is all 3 of the armies on the defence are going to be Gondorian armies. If they can keep their organisation, their steel walls should be pretty effective. But I also believe it's going to be a mix of several evil factions on the attack, including Harad, who have got a lot of AP to boot. We'll go through the attackers now, actually, come to think of it, and yeah, it is 4 Harad armies commanded by a single Umbar army, so a good mix here of numbers, AP and quality on the attack, which Gondor will have to try and deal with. Starting off here with Froggy, he's got some Haradrim Spearmen, very cheap, very effective at what they do, and that's to die. They can absorb ammunition, which is going to be key here, because Gondor, of course, have got a good range of archers. Over here we have the dismounted Serpent Guard with the armour upgrade, which actually in terms of melee abilities are a very good unit of line infantry indeed, as I've said before. In terms of damage, they will be able to outperform something like the fully upgraded Gondor infantry even, but the problem they're going to have is their defensive attributes, even with the upgraded armour, are not as solid. Which may be the difference here, because if Gondor are going to try and whittle down this attacking horde that's descending upon them, they're going to have to do it through ranged means as well as melee. It's going to have to be a mix of the two. And for the Serpent Guard, definitely the Gondorian archers will want to try and exploit their weaknesses. Haradrim archers, I mean, it's important to have some archers when you're on the attack. This is a scenario, so they couldn't choose their armies. But yeah, I mean, Haradrim archers are not all that effective in terms of their ability to deal damage, but much like the spears, they can be an annoyance because they do demand a response, and it may be resources that Gondor don't want to put into them. Assassin units, as I've said previously, the assassin units in the new hotfix should be more effective at what they do. If you can single out an enemy unit and use your throwing projectiles on them, you should be able to kill even bodyguard units. It will cost you though, like generally speaking, the Hashari will not come out of that fight against like a really high tier infantry unit looking all that healthy themselves. But it's all about how you use them. Once again though, low armour, very low armour, they're going to need to steer clear of any archers. More Haradrim archers back here. Southron pikemen. That was a bit of a frame drop there, which is a little bit concerning. Southron pikes, obviously AP, their stats are poor, but, you know, as the battle wears on, this could be the sort of unit to make a real difference. Southron warband, cheap AP spears, again, the problem with them is not going to be their abilities at dealing damage, because for what they cost, they can deal damage quite effectively, especially against a faction like Gondor. but their defensive abilities are limited. Their shields are made of wicker, their armour is made of wood. Not going to be all that effective at stopping Gondorian arrows should they be forthcoming. Haradrim Spearmen, and then right at the back we have the bodyguard tier unit that Froggy has got available to him, the Champions of Nathrat, which against Gondor are going to be extremely effective. This is the kind of unit Gondor really don't want to see because of their ability to deal a ton of AP damage, but it is only one unit after all. Gondor will try to focus them down, I'm sure. Then we have BMK Overlord of the Dark Cloud. He has gone for he has been given a mostly Muhad army, so they've gone from Mahud to Muhad. Just as soon as I was getting used to Mahud, they've gone back to how they used to be pronounced. But yeah, a mostly savage tribal army this, so we've got some Muhad warriors, which overall, in terms of numbers, obviously are far in excess of the Serpent Guard. They're not as powerful in melee. They can still deal a decent amount of damage. It's much the same idea here, where their ability to deal damage for what they cost is actually quite good. But of course, very low armour, so anything but from the front. Their big shields are somewhat decent at absorbing arrow fire, but if they do get attacked from any other direction with arrows, they will melt away. But there are quite a lot of them at the end of the day, and they're not overly expensive if you do want to bring them in a battle where you aren't given your armies. Beast Tamers and more warriors. So Beast Tamers, of course, the polearm variant, pretty decent as well, but once again very vulnerable to arrow fire. There's Berserkers, once again very vulnerable to arrow fire, being the Muhad units, very low armour, but decent, cheap and cheerful shock infantry, which will be useful here against Gondor with their AP, provided they can get into melee without being hammered too hard. Beast Hunters, so lots of javelin men, a catapult to maybe peel away at some of the walls. We have some Trollmen of Harad, as well as the Champions of Nathrat. So the Trollmen, of course, the strongest of all of the savage folk of the desert, and the Trollmen of Harad obviously AP as well. They have a shield which will help them a little bit, but again, as soon as their HP is gone, their armour values are very much in question. Champions of Nathrat, and then back here, of course, the Demons of the Desert, another terrifying foe for Gondor. So really, it's a matter of if Gondor can kill enough of these guys before they can dish out their effectiveness in melee, because that's a lot of AP, but it's also a lack of armour that Gondor can exploit. Inarius is going to be effectively leading the siege of this settlement, playing as Umbar, as you place Umbar above Harad in the pecking order of the evil factions. Belagair archers, obviously Umbar share a lot more in common with Gondor than the Haradrim they're fighting alongside. Belagair archers, for example, very good in a skirmish fight with the armour upgrade. Then their shields also going to be decent if they want to play the long game against Gondor, which Umbar are going to be much more willing to do than the Haradrim. Corsair infantry with the armour upgrade, again, a few volleys that they have in them before being used as light infantry. Armour upgrade makes them a little bit stronger as well, of course. Blackguards, lots of good javelins, again, something that Gondor will be looking to try and get rid of as quickly as possible, because these javelin men can be really, really effective. Not as strong as the Demons of the Desert, but stronger than the Beast Hunters. Upgraded Balakith Shield Bearers, that's more AP that Gondor are going to have to try and deal with. They have the armour upgrade themselves as well to make themselves a little bit tankier. Alcarondas Legion and Balakith Axe Guard, Narun Sentinel. So yeah, I mean, Umbar of course have got quite a decent amount of quality here on display. A Dunaim Shield Guard, and then at the back, Narun Royal Guard and Belagair Pikemen. Over here we have another Harad army played by Infinity 7. He's got some Southron Pikemen. He also has got some Haradrim archers, so a fairly similar army this to Froggy, I think, more of a Southron inspired one than a sort of desert inspired one, so perhaps a little bit, sort of near Harad, the coastal regions rather than the deep desert is where most of these lads are going to be coming from. Hashari again, so assassins, Serpent Guard upgraded, lots of Southrons, more Haradrim spearmen, and at the back over here with the general we have the Serpent's Fangs, which of course have got their poison arrows, and with their greatly increased unit size, I mean, I think they have been made like the Narun Royal Guard where their HP has been taken away, but overall as an arch unit now they're so much more effective than they used to be. Like, this is exactly what was needed for them. The poison arrows could be effective. I mean, Gondor can break if you apply enough pressure to them, so as the battle wears on that could be a fairly decisive tool to have. And then another one of these more of sort of savage, deep desert inspired armies for Y2K86. Muhads, a few Southrons in here as well, but mostly it's going to be Muhads. And we can see their Trollmen as well, 3 units of Trollmen of Harad. I mean, these not pulling their punches with these attacking armies at all here, Eclipse, when he was building these armies, because it's not as if any of them are particularly poor quality. I mean, the two sort of Southrony Harad armies are probably the lowest quality armies that are on the attack, but they still have enough AP and enough expertise in melee to cause Gondor some problems if the sort of unit cohesion starts to fall apart. Speaking of which, let's go through Gondor. Starting off with Sin of the Dark Cloud, Fountain Guard. Rangers, of course, are always going to be such a needed tool on the defence when the odds are in the attacker's favour like this. There's some upgraded Veterans of Osgiliath in there as well. Citadel Guard are in there, Warns of the White Tower are in there. Interesting to see where he decides to place those as the battle gets underway. Some upgraded Gondor Spearmen and Guards of Osgiliath. This would normally be where the town centre would be if this city was sort of a standard siege battle instead of incorporated into a scenario in the middle there. Gondor Spearmen upgraded, so Gondor here, it's going to be obvious what they have. They've got all of their units fully upgraded, which they're going to need. Gondor Archers on the walls, Axemen of Lasarnak. The AP will be useful against Umbar, not so much against Harad, but you know, their damage is still going to be necessary, perhaps against something like the Serpent Guard. More Archers, more Axemen. That's pretty much it for them. Gondor Archers, more Axemen, Gondor Spears, Guards of Osgiliath again defending this gate. I'm actually noticing a bit of a lack of rams for the attackers. And to be fair, siege towers, now that I come to think of it, there's a lack of siege engines overall, which will be quite interesting to see how that works out. Marksman of Caerandros, perhaps a little bit of a blessing here for Gondor. So they're not going to be swarmed, actually. You know, the attackers are definitely going to have to pick and choose where they go. Gondor infantry fully upgraded for Eclipse. He's got some heavy swordsmen in there as well. He's got some Raven Helms. Pretty much his entire army is over here. So he's got some Guards of Osgiliath, marksmen up on the walls, more infantry, Fountain Guard are in here as well. So pretty much the full shebang of Gondor infantry is going to be in there somewhere. Veterans of Osgiliath, a couple of Pelagia Marines for their javelins as well, a defensive catapult, and then finally up on the high ground, which, considering the fact there's a lack of siege engines except for the one that BMK has, perhaps these side passageways up onto the high ground to attack Tundra's Fox's army may be the way to go. Fully upgraded Gondor Archers, Guards of Osgiliath, Pelagia Marines, a couple of units of fully upgraded Gondor infantry as well, fully upgraded Axemen of Lasarnak, so I get pretty much the same sort of thing all around here. Axemen of Lasarnak, although to be fair, I mean, there's still the keep that he can take shelter in. This is the end of the map, to be fair, so he can actually use this drill yard at the back, but I think you should be able to get in here, unless it says building, it doesn't say gate, so maybe this is just purely for aesthetic purposes, and you can't actually take cover within there. Perhaps that's where all the civilians are hiding out for the time being. Gondor Infantry, Fountain Guard, yeah, all the same sort of things. Warns of the White Tower, the armour-piercing now Warns of Minas Ithil. And then over here as well, guarding this side passageway up also, we have another detachment of his army, which has got all of the usual suspects as well. So I will make a little cut here, I think, because I don't know how long it's going to take for the battle to get underway. It could be a very small cut for all I know. But I will make a cut here and we'll rejoin when the battle is getting underway. Well, here we go. The arrows are starting to fly as the attackers start to tighten the noose around this Gondorian-held settlement. And the Marksmen of Caerandros were thinking about firing, but they thought better of it, because after all, these are just Haradrim archers, and the ranged power that Gondor can bring to bear with their bowmen is going to be very important throughout this battle, especially when it comes to trying to thin out the ranks of the Haradrim armies, whose armour is a little bit more questionable, but who in melee actually pose perhaps a bigger threat than Umbar with all of their AP, especially with units like their Trollmen. That's going to be something that Gondor are going to try and nip in the bud immediately if they can at all help it. From the front, we also have Sin's wall starting to be pressured a little bit more. Umbar going to be actually leading the way with the Dunheim Shield Guard, which is quite interesting. Corsair infantry are also going to be laying down a few volleys first and foremost. Of course, they don't have much ammunition, but utility is the name of the game with these guys. Obviously very cheap and cheerful. And also with the armour upgrade, pretty decent all around. I mean, obviously in terms of their infantry and range power, they're not going to be world beaters by any means, but just their multi-purpose nature makes them quite useful, especially at the price that they cost. Dumping an armour upgrade into them as well just makes them just a little bit tankier. You can see that Gondor not really falling for the bait with regards to trying to skirmish with the Corsair infantry. Instead, the Gondor archers are going after bigger game in the shape of the Belagire pikemen. Obviously, very vulnerable to this sort of attack. It is going to be interesting to see how the attackers decide to go about this, because they're attacking a settlement, and it's almost as if the attackers have come unprepared for a siege battle, because they don't really have any siege engines as such, unless these gates are sort of non-entities where you can just run through them, and I think that might be the case. Yes, it is. So they are going to be able to go through here, but these are very narrow choke points, to be fair, and it's the sort of battle here where Gondor are going to be very much at home. Fully upgraded Gondor Spearmen to provide the solid backdrop, the Guards of Osgiliath as well with their phalanx formation to keep them at range as best as they possibly can. I mean, sheer weight of numbers may be the way to go here. I mean, Umbar are a very heavy-duty faction themselves, so they're not actually going to take a ton of damage doing this sort of thing in the way that Harad maybe would. So perhaps Umbar taking point in this siege that they are leading is key here. But this, however, could prove to be an absolutely enormous error from BMK Overlord. He got his catapult into range of the Gondorian archers and he had to abandon the artillery piece. They so desperately need that catapult to be doing work for them. I mean, these are buildings as well. They're not actually walls, which maybe is a bit of an oversight, to be honest with you. It maybe gives the defenders a little bit too much of a comfort break with regards to the choke points that the attackers are going to have to try and go through here. But, yeah, they need the catapult here. The catapult actually isn't as useful as I first thought now, just beholding that. Because you can't actually destroy the buildings in the same way that you can destroy walls. It's kind of an interesting little thing there. Gondor archers. The Dunaim Shield Guard, however, they actually managed to force their way into a position where they could get up onto the walls. So now actually they're going to be slowly but surely working their way along and poking through the Gondor archers. I have to say, with all of the breaks that the defenders are given with regards to the way that the settlement is constructed, with the walls actually being classified as buildings and such, and the attackers not really having access to siege engines, the defenders are in a very good position in this battle, I think. As long as they keep their lines condensed, the quality should do most of the work. Even against sort of AP-focused Haradrim armies, I think they should be fine. So there's no excuse really for the defenders putting in a poor showing. And this, I think, is a bit of an oversight here. I think Sin, he needs to deal with this more quickly than he is. He's not really responding to this at all at the moment. And as a result, this unit of a Dunaim Shield Guard is going to slowly but surely work its way down the upgraded Gondor archers. And like I said, one of Gondor's most potent tools against Harad especially is going to be their archer lineup. The Gondor archers may not be the strongest archer he has at his disposal, but it's still something worth bearing in mind. And actually Umbar are coming forward with extreme numbers now, really trying to get through Gondor as quickly as they possibly can. And it's actually quite surprising. I think Sin is he's taking a little bit longer to react to this than I would normally expect. He's going to try and shoot into them with some Gondor archers. I mean, he is going to do a lot of damage to Umbar here, in all fairness, but if this pressure keeps up, they could start to swarm over the settlement, and that could be the start that the defenders were really hoping to avoid. Over on this side of the settlement, meanwhile, they are going to start heading into the settlement here. I mean, the one thing against the defenders, of course, is the fact they don't have the numbers to cover the whole area, so Harad have managed to take over this portion of the settlement fairly early, but Tundra's Fox has got his archers up on the hillside, and he is going to be shooting in here, doing damage to the Southron pikemen. Of course, they're really vulnerable to ranged attacks like that. Again, numbers is going to be the key here for the attackers. If they can swarm through the settlement and try and deal with Sin and Eclipse's armies as quickly as they possibly can, then it's going to be rough for them. It is. Harad are going to be coming in through here. I mean, this is a little bit more of a feeble effort in comparison to the large Umbar attack that was coming in. The Southron units immediately being stopped by Gondorians, but Eclipse is trying to ration out his manpower as best he can. The Gondorians will hold for the time being. I mean, the infantry won't like being in melee with anything that has AP for too long, but at the end of the day it is only Southron units, so they themselves don't have the best survivability, so the line infantry from Gondor should be able to give as good as they get in this situation. And at the end of the day, lots of reinforcements, including the vanguard of King Elisar. Oof. That was actually some really unfortunate friendly fire there from the piece of attacking siege equipment there from BMK. He did manage to hit some Gondorians as well, but you're much more likely to rout your attacking troops if you're trying to push through. Can Gondor hold on to this settlement? I mean, this is a Dol Amroth settlement by the name. Dol ERGOTH sounds very much more like a Dol Amroth name than a Gondorian one, but Gondor, after all, the dominant one in that particular relationship, and taking it upon themselves to defend their vassal's city, I suppose. Balakith's shield bearers managing to push through. They're being stopped by the Axemen of the Sarnak. And actually, I'd expect the Axemen to win that fight, especially considering the numbers being what they are, but a Dunaim Shield Guard continuing to push through a long way up onto these walls over here, and these Gondor archers not being given a moment of respite. And yeah, you can see here that Umbar, now with Harad coming forward with BMK, offering a little bit more support. Overwhelming force is the name of the game, and Gondor here are going to have to try and deal with all these numbers as quickly as they can. Because the momentum at this point with the attackers, which perhaps is the idea behind the scenario. I mean, the city is always going to be, you're fighting an uphill battle here if you're playing as Gondor, considering the situation. But Can the attackers keep up this sort of pressure throughout the entire game? Gondor can withstand a lot of punishment after all. Gondor Spearmen and Gondor Archers over here. It's not the most organised position this though from Sin. His units are a bit all over the place. Well, regardless. The first foray across the river from BMK's... The vast bulk of BMK's army is actually over here. Only a little bit was supporting Umbar through the middle. Muhad warriors leading the way as Tundra's Fox has laid on a defence for him. Gondor Archers and the like. Standard Gondorian units at best. But that should be enough to deal with the first few waves of Muhads, and the Gondor Archers just waiting for their opportunity, I think, to shoot into the sides of these units so they're not having to bypass the shields. They could go after the Trollmen as well. It'll take a little while for basic archers to have an impact on the Trollmen, to be fair. But they really need to try and deal with the Trollmen before they can lay down too much of a beating in melee. Beast Tamers coming forward as well. Here you can see, I mean, this is an effective phalanx for Gondor. The Gondor infantry combined with the guards of Osgiliath should be just fine at holding back the Muhad warriors. There's a lot of Muhad warriors here, but slowly but surely the Gondorians should be able to wear them down. Let's have a look over here. Harad really sort of, they've had a much easier time of pushing in over here. And the problem is now the pincer effect is going to be real. The pincer attack coming in from Froggy on one side. The two Haradrim armies of Infinity 7 and Y2K86 over on this side. Javelins coming in, doing damage to the Axemen of Lasarnak there. Once again, Sin is going to be put on the back foot here. He needs to make a bit of a decision because they are starting to feel the pressure on all sides at this point, I would suggest, Gondor. He is actually going to move forward to engage against the Muhad Berserkers. I mean, in this particular fight, I would definitely favour the Muhad Berserkers over the Gondor Spearmen. I mean, the Spearmen, against a unit that doesn't have a lot of melee defence or armour, they will actually be able to rack up a kill count decently quickly, considering the kind of unit that they are, but the AP of the Muhad Berserkers is exactly the sort of thing that you need against a unit like the Gondor Spearmen. And I don't fancy their chances in that particular battle, to be honest. Muhad Beast Hunter's taking a bit of a beating from the Gondor Archers. You can see over here that Eclipse is sending back some of his units as well. Froggy with an enormous push in. And this is almost certainly why we're seeing a bit of a dip in frame rates, because there's so many units in one place. Froggy, a lot of his units are shaken, and to be fair, he's had a bit of a tougher time. I think that's because Eclipse has centred his army much more around counteracting this assault. The problem is now Inarius is going to be coming in from the side, and Froggy, even though he may not have had the same sort of progress through the settlement as Inarius has had, it's still important that he's doing this because Eclipse has had to send forward so much of his army just to stop this Haradrim push that it's meant that Sin has had no support at dealing with the other parts of the settlement. Infinity 7's Harad army coming through here. The Gondorians over here have just been completely overwhelmed by the joint efforts of Harad and Umbar, and the main city is going to be taken. Again, numbers washing over you is always going to be the thing that you fear most in this sort of situation if you're the defenders. Organisationally, I think there was room for improvement, but ultimately I do think that the way this scenario is built is kind of intentional for this to be sort of trying to stem the tide, so I get my words out. Southron Warband from Infinity 7 charging in. The Gondorians will be able to deal with Harad as they filter in, but as soon as more reinforcements arrive forward, more Southron Warband coming in. These archers are doing their best to get as much damage done before they inevitably have to pull back. There's also the small matter of these attacks coming from the side, and actually you can see now Trollmen have arrived to the front line. Beast Hunters are actually in melee, so the Javelins have probably thrown a few of their volleys as well, and as a result BMKs are also making headway over on this side. So the Gondorians, it's very much a backs to the walls defence for them thus far, and they really need to start making more of a dent in the Haradrim armies, I think, or at least trying to slow the momentum down, because as it stands, things haven't been too kind to them in this battle. The only area I would say where things have gone as they would have wanted, perhaps, is over here, trying to stop Froggy's advance, but ultimately, you know, that is still a fight that eventually they're going to lose. There's simply too much of the Haradrim left alive. There's a lot of arrows still coming in here, a lot of damage being done, which is the key. Now you can see BMK's army that was helping out Inarius on that front coming across to help Froggy punch through. Yeah, I mean, it's been a brutal fight. But ultimately it's been one where the defenders have always been sort of struggling to try and regain their posture. And so far they haven't really been able to do that. A lot of Southrons from Infinity 7, so you can see initially when there was only a few of them, the Gondorians were holding just fine, but now there's a ton of them moving in. And all of these units, each one dealing a little bit of AP damage, that's really going to add up on the plate-clad Gondorian soldiers. Marksmen of Caer Andros getting their arrows down range as well. Over here, they're holding on pretty well on this street as well, to be fair. A lot of the arrow fire is coming down this street as well, though. So Y2K86's army has taken a lot of losses at the hands of the Gondorian bowmen, and also the infantry. For Gondor has gained the upper hand as a result, but it's still only a single unit of Gondor spears in shield wall at the end of the day. Eventually Harad will be able to get these lot out of the way. But better. There's light at the end of the tunnel here for Gondor, perhaps. Vanguard of King Alisar there. Once again, it's the archers. I mean, really, it is just a delaying measure, this from Gondor, and they're trying their best to do as much damage as they can. And to be fair, Froggy's army at this point, with all of the damage that Eclipse is able to do from two directions, and actually it's actually Sin and Eclipse, using their archers from two directions on Froggy's army. Froggy's army is in a bit of a state at this point. So definitely a silver lining to all of this punishment that the defenders have been taking, all of the ground within the settlement that they have thus far lost. This, however, could prove to be a real issue. I mean, it's not BMK's entire army. He does have a few of his units within the city limits. But this is still a significant force which is coming up this way, and it is going to mean that Tundra's Fox is going to have to use a decent amount of troops here, and you can actually see you can actually go up and over this grass verge as well, so it's not as if this is just a single choke point, which actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you look at this, this is the sort of grass bank that you would try and scale in a situation like this, as uncomfortable as it may be. Yeah, I mean, this over here is not a huge army, to be honest with you. I think range is going to be needed. If BMK keeps up the pressure, Tundra's Fox could be in some real trouble. You can see he's got a lot of his units over here in reserve, sort of biding their time and waiting. Y2K has got some of his units perhaps waiting for the opportunity to attack from the other side as well. It's all about timing this for Harad. If they time this well, I don't think there's going to be much that Gondor is going to be capable of doing, but if they time it poorly, Gondor could try and cripple these attacking armies one by one in the same way that Froggy's is currently being dealt with. Pelagia Marines reloading, but I mean, I'm not sure whether they're actually going to be able to get a volley off before they're shot to death. Or just rout. These Hashari, I mean, they're in here doing damage, but they're also surrounded on all sides by Ravenhelm, so you'd imagine Gondor have gained the upper hand in that particular fight, and those Hashari should be dealt with. Unit of Guards of Osgiliath in reserve, more units over here, Gondor archers, Marksmen of Caer Andros now out of ammunition, charging forward, trying to stem the tide again. Infinity 7, his momentum has slowed as well. I mean, to be fair, the wind has gone out of the attacker's sails a little bit. The assault has slowed. I mean, there is still a certain inevitability about the fact that they are going to take the city, but Gondor have made it more awkward than it looked like it was initially going to be. Southron Warband moving forward. Again, the AP going to be very useful against the fully upgraded Gondorian archers. How best are Gondor going to deal with this situation? I mean, there's a lot of Gondor Archers and Spears still holding on over there. Even fight. If they pull back, that's going to effectively allow them to sandwich those units in. I mean, it could be a sacrifice they're going to have to make. I mean, they're going to try and save as much as they possibly can. Even a unit of out of ammunition Gondor Archers is worth saving if you can manage it. Corsair Infantry coming across. Finally, this crossfire that's in an Eclipse set up on Froggy is being dealt with. Some Corsair Infantry moving forward to force the archers onto the back foot. These Ravenhelms are also going to unfortunately be caught and left behind, which is a shame for them. Obviously strong in melee, exactly the sort of thing Gondor would want for the late game. Alcarondas Legion closing them in on them, as well as the Corsair Infantry from the other side, and just through sheer numbers they're going to try and get away here, the Ravenhelms. I think they'd be lucky to do it without routing. I mean, they're wavering. No, I think they are going to do it. Gondor Infantry is routing though. Gondor Spearmen is shaken. And yeah, you can see Froggy's army is now free to move forward, albeit after taking one hell of a beating from the Gondorian archers, as you would always worry about if you're playing as Harad against Gondor. He is, however, moving quickly. Decisive action here being taken to try and stop them from saving as many troops as they possibly can. And they are going to be able to cut off these Gondor archers, or at least to an extent. They're going to be able to kill off more of them at any rate. And every man they can run down as the Gondorians try to reorganise their defence is going to add up in the late game. As Gondor try to put on a final stand that the attackers cannot crack through. Speaking of which, that is a large engagement happening over here. Harad dismounted Serpent Guard, Muhad Berserkers over there. Serpent Guard up on the walls dealing with the Gondor infantry. They're trying, I think, to retreat. The problem with retreating, though, is that Harad can also cut off their advance up this hill if they move over here, and I think that's exactly what Y2K is trying to do now. He's going to try and cut off the retreat of all of the troops within the settlement, and only a single unit of Gondor infantry is standing in his way to prevent him from doing that. And with Muhad Berserkers on the front line, as well as, well, actually those are Southron archers, so they're not good in melee at all, but Muhad Berserkers and Muhad warriors coming in here, and it's only a matter of time before the Gondor infantry does fall. A lot of arrows flying all over the place as well. It's difficult to tell from whom they're coming. But still, good damage. Southron archers. Yes, those over there. Harajam archers shooting into the back of the Gondor infantry. They have their armour still coming into effect, but their shield is taken out of the equation with that. And Gondor do retreat. So in the end, they are able to wriggle free. That was a precarious situation there, because even though Y2K's army would not have been able to completely stop all of these units from retreating, if they had been sandwiched in there, that could have been an enormous amount of troops that Gondor would have had lost. But there's still hope for them in this fight as a result of that. A catapult bombarding the Harajam as they move forward, and actually that's a really good shot there. A nice blob for them to go after. And this could be where Eclipse's catapult really pays for itself. They need to hurry though, because those Harajam are not going to stay in that blob for long, and they're not going to be in a position where they can easily be hit for long either. And again, this is the sort of situation where you can really start to rack up a bit of a kill count. Those shots are going wide. Two of them have gone wide. One of them does hit centre mass of the infantry there, though. Southron pikes taking a blow. A lot of these units are still stuck though. It is a narrow gate, and they're getting shot up. I mean, how much is Gondor really going to be able to salvage here? Over here, meanwhile, again, like, they're just being run through here. The problem is Gondor is still on the back foot. Those warns of Minas Ithil as well have been dealt with by the demons of the desert. It's very clear to see what's happened here. The bodies are densely packed. Gondor archers are firing. Javelins are here, but yeah, I think, you know, Tundra's Fox's army, he didn't have enough troops over here to stop BMK's advance. And as a result, BMK has ruthlessly exploited that. There's still a long way to go in this battle though. 41k frames, and we're only 18k frames into it. If I were just looking at this battle separate of that, I'd be thinking, well, you know, clearly this battle is sort of approaching its final phases here. But clearly Gondor at some point must get their ducks in a row, because if they don't, then Harad and Umbar would just run them over at this point. But that can't be the case purely because of the frames left. Vanguard of King Ellis are trying to hold on, but they need reinforcements here. Tundra's Fox is barely holding on as Eclipse is threatening to break through the lines. A charge here against some of the Ravenhelms. Oof. I mean, that's a grisly shot. I mean, this is exactly what's needed, to be fair as well. Eclipse turning his catapult around, and that immediately causes a lot of these lower end Muhad units to think about routing, and several of them do. I mean, units of 60 or 70 routing is not a good sign for them. A charge coming in from the Ravenhelms won't help that either. The Trollmen will stick around and fight, of course, but then it becomes a numbers game. And I mean, to be fair to BMK, if I were in his situation, this is exactly what I'd be doing as well, but it's become a little bit dicey for him, because while he is making progress, his allies aren't really in a position where they can attack from the other sides. Maybe Y2K could be, but I mean, he doesn't have enough troops over here to really make a genuine push, so it's kind of a fruitless endeavour it would be from him. That's a very interesting looking crop field there. Truly some advanced Gondorian farming techniques to be able to till rows at almost a 90-degree angle. Foul sorcery is afoot. All of these Harajam units now. The city has pretty much been taken. There's only a few Gondorians left. They're broken and fighting to the death. So the city of DOL ERGOTH has been taken, but the keep, the noble residences, have not yet been seized. And all of the civilians will undoubtedly be in this this fortification at the top of the hill at this point. Southron archers charging. I mean, this is going to be a difficult thing to try and wear down purely with infantry. Fountain Guard with Gondor infantry providing the screen at the front. is a very effective phalanx indeed. I mean, undoubtedly what Harad will try and do is use javelins. Demons of the Desert would be preferable, but, you know, the Beast Hunters, oof, that is a grisly shot there from the catapult, having already helped to turn the tide against BMK. A really nice hit there into the Haradrim forces that are massing at the gates. Very, very interesting, this fight. I mean, still, BMK, it does go to show that he really did prioritise this push over here and only sent a few token units to help in the city, because he still has a decent army over here. Having said that, I think Gondor have managed to salvage the situation over here with more units on the way over. Nimlothian Honor Guard as well, Veterans of Osgiliath, the Vanguard of King Alisar are still here. It's quality units he's having to deal with. And Muhad Warriors at the end of the day are not going to be a match for Ravenhounds of Kaer Andros. The Trollmen, still a problem, but also the Trollmen are actually on the part of the line where the Fountain Guard are, so the Fountain Guard can keep them at arm's length a little bit more effectively. And with Nimlothian Honor Guard coming in as well, numbers and quality here for Gondor means that BMK's assault, I think, is actually going to peter out, and there is a case for saying maybe BMK should have waited a little longer for his allies to be in a position to do this as well. I see why he didn't. I would have done this, but it still could have been a mistake, because if his army falls apart, all of these units are going to be able to then focus on fewer directions, whereas if they were attacking like this from all three directions, I think Gondor would have been in real trouble. But even with this, Froggy's come forward, Dismounted Serpent Guard and Champions of Nafrat, so Froggy's got a couple of units over here as well helping out, and they are still making progress here, Harad, so still worrying times as the dark red banners continue to make progress. Forward comes the Champions of Nafrat. I mean, it's such a tough unit for Gondor to try and deal with, because no matter what you throw at them in melee, the Champions of Nafrat are going to be effective against them if you're Gondor. Like, it's one of those units that Gondor just hates to fight in melee, because they're always going to have AP be leveraged against them. The Champions of Nafrat are one of the best armor-piercing infantry units in the game. Dismounted Serpent Guard moving forward. Demons of the Desert looking to get into a brutal position here. If they shoot through that Gondorian line, it could be the catapult managed to bring this situation into Gondor's favour once again, but now a really good shot from the Demons of the Desert, and all of a sudden things are looking pretty decent for Harad. I still think ultimately this assault is going to fail, but the damage and the panic they're going to cause among the Gondorian ranks should be sufficient, to be honest with you, to allow Harad to make progress on other sides. Infinity 7 moving forward again. A little bit more of a slow burn on the front here. It's going to be costly for the attackers to head up this really steep hill while getting shot by all of these units. I mean, the Athenian Rangers are in the perfect position here. I mean, it's going to be absolutely devastating for the Haradrim as they move up here. They're not good under normal arrow fire, let alone ranger fire. And they're having to battle through a phalanx that includes Fountain Guard. Tough for them. Y2K though, now most of his army is doubling back, and he is going to reform to try and attack from this side. To be fair, over here, the Grass Verge is more of a fortified wall, so he's not going to be able to take multiple routes like Froggy and BMK were over on the other side, but it's still important that he puts pressure on from this side as well. Attacking from all directions is going to be the key to Harad's chances. We're just beyond the halfway point in this battle, actually. And unsurprisingly, Gondor are behind at the moment. But again, I feel as though that is the way that this settlement... Oh, those Vanguard of King Alisar just took a volley. Hashari and Demons of the Desert trying to focus them down. Citadel Guard on their way over here. Muhad Beast Tamers. So pretty much the last units they have in reserve over on this side are being committed forward now to try and give Gondor something to think about. A Phalanx unit as well, so they'll be difficult to get rid of unless Gondor decides to focus them down with arrows, which to be fair they do have. They have some Gondor archers. They have these Veterans of Osgiliath as well. I mean, take your pick of targets. They're going after the Demons of the Desert, which, to be fair, they need to, because if the Demons of the Desert are allowed to use the entire ammunition supply they have on this Gondorian infantry, it's going to be tough on Gondor. It goes to show how resilient the Gondorian infantry line is, though. It is sort of a dwarven quality where they've taken a beating from units they're technically weak against, and yet they're still standing. They're still making it difficult for Harad. Part of that is the support of the archers they have in behind, something that Gondor definitely have over the dwarves. But a part of it is also the fact that their infantry, just in general, in this kind of fight, is very resilient. It's able to withstand punishment. There are the Hashari once again. They're going to move in. I think morale is going to be an issue down here among the Muhad Beast Tamers. Beast Tamers are over here. Demons of the Desert trying to maneuver into a position where they can shoot. I mean, the Serpent Guard peeled off to prevent the advance of the Citadel Guard. Citadel Guard is going to be sufficient to bring down upgraded Serpent Guard, I'm afraid. The AP makes the difference, and just the fact they've got high stats in melee. The Spear Malice applies, but the AP more than makes up for that. For me, the Citadel Guard are a fantastic unit for Gondor to have. But, doesn't matter how fantastic they are in melee, with their AP and with their solid stats, if they take a full-blooded volley from the Demons of the Desert, they're going to take a lot of damage, and there they go. Bisected. Forward comes the Gondor archers. Out of ammunition, but they're going to move in. Demons of the Desert are also out of ammunition, I think, now, so they're going to be committed forward. I mean, they are strong in melee, but they're not as strong as their Trollmen cousins. They're capable of dealing damage, but not to the same degree, by any means. Let's have a look at the middle choke point, because, I mean, Gondor, they have reserves, but not all that many. But over here on this front, I mean, it was always going to be I mean, yeah, the frame rate doesn't dip now when the Rangers shoot. I'm still not entirely convinced that there won't be a crash at some point related to Rangers, but that was a brilliant change to remove the blood spray. At least from my perspective. It makes my life so much more stress-free. Pelagia Marines and Athelian Rangers, though, I mean, this is going to be brutal here. I mean, Umbar and Harad trying to smash things down from the front. There are a few sections of the line which are looking a little bit thin at this point. Another unit of Gondor infantry is going to be applied to the affected area, as well as another unit of Fountain Guard. I mean, to be fair, like I said though, Gondor don't have that much in the way of reserves, so if you can force their reserves to be used now, the hope would be for you that later on in the battle they won't have anything when another crisis hits. Yeah, once again, Pelagia Marines and Marksmen of Caer Andros. Athelian Rangers they are not, but very damaging they still are. In terms of base damage, they're actually stronger, so against the target they hit, they'll do more damage than a Ranger arrow. But yeah, once again, I think the problem here is Y2K86, his army is damaged already, so trying to force his way through this one choke point is going to be very difficult for him, but he is putting on the pressure. Does he have reserves? He does, but a lot of his reserves are too far away for my liking. Like, there's no real danger if you put them in just down here. They're a little bit closer and you can commit them more readily. Like, there's no real purpose for them being all the way back here, to be honest with you. Ah, you can enter this keep. That's good, actually. I agree. Veterans of Osgiliath at the back here. I mean, Gondor still have a place they can fall back to. At this point, though, I'd kind of question their decision to fall back if they wanted to, because, I mean, they wouldn't really have any infantry left to defend with, like a couple of units perhaps, but they've committed so much to these front lines at this point, I think they'd actually be better off just going all in on the defensive positions they currently occupy. There's still units marching through the city down there, Blackguards. I mean, Umbar are bringing forward again more quality, Alcarondas Legion, Balakith Axguard, Corsair Blackguards, all units that will be very useful in this struggle against Gondor. Catapult moving into position as well. But it really is over here still, where, I mean, Gondor at this point have gained the upper hand. And I think actually at this point in the battle, Gondor will probably be feeling pretty good about themselves, because they've managed to completely neutralise this assault over here, which again is perhaps a sign that BMK went a little too early. Froggy sent some reinforcements over here, which made it so this attack lasted a little bit longer, but ultimately didn't change the outcome too much. And this of course means that now Gondor are going to have a lot of spare units which they can use as they please, and this also was the most open choke point that Gondor could have tried to push their way through. Defeat seems certain for the Demons of the Desert. Victory seems certain. Only a fool could lose this battle. Unsurprising when you consider the numbers here. But yeah, I mean, a lot of pikes still alive. Citadel Guard are still here. Veterans of Osgiliath are scurrying across immediately. There's still some Haradrim on the front line over here. Beast Tamers, actually their morale holding together better than I would have thought, but I suppose there isn't really a super high tier unit on the front line. There's a few Axemen of the Sarnak, but it's mostly Gondor archers they're actually fighting off against, so perhaps them not routing is not too surprising in the grand scheme of things. This catapult, what happened to one of the catapults? One of them got destroyed, I suppose, by a catapult duel. This catapult is now real close to the front line. They're going to try and get some point-blank shots into this Gondorian front line, which is held solid as a rock. It's exactly the sort of fight that the Gondorians are going to like. Still, the Athelian Rangers continue to butcher their way through. I mean, it's the perfect position for Rangers. Like, whenever the defenders are able to get their Rangers into a position as perfect as that, and you can tell that was the idea behind that, because that there is not something you can scale. It's almost tailor-made for Rangers. Hacks. But yeah, obviously Rangers, whenever Rangers are used this effectively, you worry for the attackers. Ever since Rangers were introduced in their current form, they have been the scourge of attacking armies the world over. What about over here? The Gondor actually forcing the Haradrim back a little bit. The Corsair Blackguard's heading over this way, actually, interestingly enough. Arrow fire coming in, Balagar archers from Inaria, so Umbar not fancying their chances going right up the pipe, and instead they're going to take one of the side attacks, which I think is fair enough. Like that position from the front is really devastating with those Rangers. The Rangers must be running low on ammunition by now, but they've already... I'd be surprised if we didn't see Rangers with 1,000+ kills with a position like that, to be honest. The Gondorian line has not budged an inch over here. In fact, it has, but it's been forwards. That's really unfortunate for the attackers. That side was where the attackers were making headway, but again, maybe just shot their load too early. Forward come the Axemen of Masarnak. Probably aesthetic, from an aesthetic point of view, they're probably my favourite heavy Axemen, to be honest with you, alongside the Westmark Marshals, fully upgraded like that. Really like the look of both of those two units. Westmark Marshals maybe slightly more, but the Axemen of Masarnak as well are a very aesthetically pleasing unit. Balagar archers firing away here. Able to get some good hits there on the Pelagia Marines. Still Pelagia Marines. I mean, the javelin fire is not going to help matters, but having said that, these Pelagia Marines are also taking a bit of a beating themselves. And the announcer still doesn't fancy the chances of the defenders, and I can only assume that's because there is still a lot of reinforcements to be committed forward. I mean, Umbar is still down here with reserves. There's still a lot of units down here. White K86 sending some support. Trollmen, some battered spearmen, archers as well. And there are now gaps being found. A big gap, actually. That's a big oversight from Gondor to allow that to happen. And these Balakath Axguard immediately taking advantage of that, upgraded as well. I mean, in close quarters, their AP is going to be really useful. It's unfortunate, really, they've been caught out by Fountain Guard, because Fountain Guard, if they can get their weapons down, it's going to be a real issue for them. Let's see. Wardens of the White Tower. Serpent's Fangs are down here. I mean, they're good in melee as well, in fairness. Gondor infantry trying to sort of make it so these Axguard are well and truly cut off, and yeah, I think the problem there was the Balakath Axguard had the opportunity to punch through, they did, but nothing was in reserve ready to follow them in. But this Gondorian line at this point is starting to look a little bit thinner on the ground. So all of this blood that the attackers have spent trying to push them back, maybe it is finally starting to bear fruit. We can only wait and see. Still Fountain Guard there though. Like, Fountain Guard, like, fighting into Fountain Guard when you don't have like a ready-made tool to deal with them. I mean, you do have Corsair Blackguards around here somewhere, I suppose, but if you send them forward, they're going to be focused down immediately. It's always like in melee, it's one of those units that it's feared for a very good reason. Corsair Blackguards, again, I don't really agree with using them on the Pelagia Marines at this point. Like, yeah, you kind of do need to deal with the javelins, but can you afford to not use the Corsair Blackguards on this infantry? Like, Corsair Blackguards for me should be over here firing their javelins into the side of this infantry over here so that they can start pushing forwards. Because at this point they're just being held in place indefinitely. There are Trollmen on the front line now as well, and eventually they should make it through, but it's going to take them longer than it should. And all the while, on this front line, still, they're going to really struggle to get up this hill because more reinforcements are coming. Ones of the White Tower and the Fountain Guard. Like, again, reserves, not many. Gondor archers are over there, but that's not really the strongest unit of infantry that can be committed forward. Balakithak's got Alcarondas Legion to push through as well, but again, have they overextended? They are up against Fountain Guard after all, trying to buckle the formation, I can see that. But will they be successful? Yeah, defeat seems certain. Gondorians, I mean, they're taking arrow fire, but that shouldn't really worry Gondorians too much with their armour and their shields, but gaps are being found now. Inarius is starting to burrow into the side of this Gondorian formation with his Axe Guard, which with all of that AP damage is exactly what the Doctor ordered. They needed this, the attackers, to start forcing the defenders onto the back foot once again. Arrows are also being used to target down the guards of Osgiliath, which is the best target, to be honest. They still have good armour as far as pikemen go, but they're still unshielded, still by far the most vulnerable Gondorian unit. The Fountain Guard also are unshielded, but their armour is even thicker, and basic Haradrim archers will struggle to kill Fountain Guard, to be honest with you. Forward come more reinforcements, Gondor archers getting in here, Citadel Guard, so they will be able to shut down this unit of Alcarondas Legion that managed to find its way in behind enemy lines. Once again, Gondor managing to shut down this attack. Hard Berserkers, here's the Corsair Blackguards in the position where I thought they always should have been, to be honest with you. They're taking some volleys from the Gondor archers, but it's only basic Gondor archers. Their shields are pointing in the right direction. Can they use their javelins to good effect, I wonder? They don't seem to be forthcoming with their ammunition thus far, and as a result, this front line continues to hold. Marshman of Karen just very depleted at this point, but still firing away. And these kills from Gondor's ranged units are really going to add up, I think. And I even though the announcer doesn't seem to think so, I still think Gondor are in pole position to go on to win this fight. I think the advantages are there to be capitalised upon, and still, I mean, Gondor are actually pushing down the hill now. Like, it looked as though they were going to start working up the line, the attackers, but once again they ran out of steam. And they could push up here. They could push up here the whole time, and they didn't. Yeah, I mean, if the Rangers are in a position like that, you need to throw all the men you can to try and shut them down, and they just didn't do that. The Trollmen are up here now, but it's too little too late. Another Haradrim general goes down. Yeah, oh, there goes the crazy death animation where the unit model goes crazy and then T-poses into the floor. When you get hit so hard, you have to T-pose and turn 2D. Trollmen do hit pretty hard, to be fair, but they're stuck at this point between the Rangers and the Fountain Guard. I mean, they could kill the Rangers, to be fair, they do so much damage, but like I said, it's already, like, the Rangers have already more than paid for themselves. So at this point, anything they get on top of that is just going to be a bonus. More units trudging their way up this steep hill, more Beast Tamers, but I think that's pretty much it. I mean, there's another unit on the way over. Belagai archers, though. Not really the match winners that were needed at this point in time. So at this point, this assault just needs to keep going for as long as it can. Serpent's Fangs are overhead, surrounding one Warden of the White Tower who got a little bit overzealous. It's going to be over here where the attacks are going to have to try and make something happen, and still, they're still bottled up. I mean, this choke point over here is narrow. It doesn't have the hill that the other one has, but it's even narrower. So Gondor, to be fair, could just keep throwing troops in the way, and it's going to take them a long time to try and break through here. Especially with how well Gondor normally do on the defence. Upgraded veterans of Osgiliath are in there. There's still some Axemen of Lasarnak on the front line as well. The Beast Tamers are going to try and get their phalanx down, but at this point in close quarters, the Gondorians will most certainly fancy their chances, I think. Let's see here. Yeah, Berserkers, Trollmen. Still some Alcarondas Legion, still some Naran Iron Guards, so still some units of quality over here. Units of genuine quality as well. Of course, they have Blackguard. If they still have ammunition and they place their volleys very well, perhaps. I mean, Gondor pretty much emptied the keep at the back except for this one unit of veterans that's on the walls. But I mean, Gondor at this point, they're charging down the hill, forcing the blackguards away. The Serpent's Fangs are still firing their poison arrows, but the Gondor archers, maybe not the target they would have been hoping to go after. Just look at this. It's a massive steep hill. And Gondor now, counter-attacking down it, trying to deal with what's left of the infantry. They are now in a perfect position for the Serpent's Fangs to shoot them, but again, the thing with the Serpent's Fangs is not really the damage they deal. The base damage of this particular arch unit is akin to something like the Balakith Marksman or Bardian Marksman. Not bad by any means, but it's not on the same level as a heavy Elven archer. Their thing is the fact that they are, decent shock troops in melee, and their poison arrows. They're good at sort of, when a line is already looking like it's on the back foot, the Serpent's Fangs is sort of the thing that you use to hammer that point home. The poison arrows will make them break. But in this situation, Harad are the ones on the back foot, so the poison arrows are not actually playing into the situation all that well. These Gondor archers continuing to push forward, continuing to hound the Corsair Blackguards, and obviously the Beast Tamers, isolated on the front line without any support, are going to be swallowed whole by the elite Gondorian infantry. A few volleys coming in, but certainly too late. So now, just over here, one by one, the attacks have failed. Can this one make something happen? They're pushing forward more now. Pelagia Marines taking some damage from the Nairu Royal Guard. There's been too much idling over here, I think. They've been too slow on the draw with this assault. I feel as though this one could have been handled a little bit better. But now it's all or nothing. They need to throw everything forward, and they need to do it quickly, because if Gondor are allowed to clog up this passageway with more Fountain Guard and Nimlothian Honor Guard, it's going to be all over. They're not going to be able to force their way through that at this point, because the Blackguards are not going to be able to get a good throw. The quality is going to be working against them. They do have the Nairu Sentinels, which are a very strong unit of pikes, but I just don't fancy, unless the attackers have got like some other strong units in reserve. Have they got anything down here? No, they're the units of Blackguards that are being chased away. Yeah, the Belagar Archers, which, like I said, 143 Belagar Archers. It's better than a kick in the teeth, but it's not really what you needed. Trollmen of Harad and Muhad Berserkers are doubling back over here to try and deal with some of the Gondorian units that have overextended, but maybe desperate measures here for the attackers, trying to sort of deal with units that are a little bit more isolated, trying to bring the Gondorian manpower down to a low enough amount that they can try and use brute force again, because that's really the only thing Harad can do at this point. The only units they have left to them are the kind that work better when they're on the front foot, charging in, dealing AP damage. That's not really the battle that Harad can afford to play, at least not charging up that big hill with all the Gondorian infantry in the way. The Serpent's Fangs have also been caught out in melee. They're strong in melee, like I said, but again, they're just being overwhelmed. And all of these Gondorians will be able to bring them down. Then they'll need to reorganise to face the Trollmen and the Muhad Berserkers. Damage done to the walls. Quite a bit of damage done to the walls. Bit of a clean-up job here. Another Harad general falls. The Haradrim are not going to have many chieftains left by the end of today. What have we got going on over here? Yeah, more units being added. I mean, they're trying to push through with brute strength now, but Gondor is still going to be able to move in. It's going to be a close battle, this, if Gondor do manage to pull out, but I just think in terms of quality, they have what it takes. Again, like Nimlothian Honor Guard. Another unit of pikemen moving forward. And that's the thing, I mean, the Umbar pikes are the stronger pikemen. I don't know, though. Still those veterans over here, which they're going to be needed. If they still have ammunition, they will be absolutely invaluable against the attack which is happening from the other direction. And now maybe overextending themselves a little bit here, Gondor. Not reacting quickly enough, not getting up the hill fast enough, and being caught out by this pocket of resistance from Y2K, which has not given up entirely on the hill just yet. I mean, Gondor could turn around all their infantry and charge down the hill to deal with them, but they could also retreat, leave a rear guard here, which I think is actually what they're going to do, which is interesting. Axemen of Asanak being pulled in. They're going to try and just force their way through the Fountain Guard. Cross-coming veterans. I don't think they have ammo left. I mean, they've got their blades out. Swords and shields. So what is going to happen over here? I mean, certainly, you know, the V formation favours Gondor here, but the quality actually does favour the attackers. Alcarondas Legion, Naruna Aru Sentinels, a few Trollmen still alive. The Beast Tamers are there to make up the numbers. They're getting support from the Naruna Aru Royal Guard and the Belagair Archers. So still some range support from Umbar. Could it be that Inarius has rationed his resources well enough to help the attackers go on to win this battle? Because it's been so punishing for them. If they were to win from that position, it would be impressive. And actually, the attackers could be or the defenders here could be bottling it a little bit, because over here, I think they're panicking a little bit. Like, they're not. This is not organised at all from the defenders. I can understand they're trying to focus on the other side, but this is a danger. Like, they can't afford to let these units just run around as they please. Corsair Blackguards are over here as well. Like, this demands a response, and they need to charge down with everything. Single units of Fountain Guard is not going to be enough. They need to come down here. The Muhad Berserkers are shaken. A downhill charge in the Citadel Guard would get rid of 72 of these shock troops, and then you can overwhelm the Trollmen with numbers. That is what is needed at this point. It's not like sin to bottle it like that. Over here, yeah, like they're running out of steam a little bit over here, the attackers, but it's over on the other side where the attackers can really make it pay at this point. If Sin refuses to commit fully against the Trollmen and the Berserkers and allows them to do too much damage. More arrows coming in, shooting into the veterans of Osgiliath. Again, heavily armoured and shielded, but whatever damage they can do would be greatly appreciated, I'm sure, by the troops still trying to fight on the front line. Corsair Blackguard, so these guys don't have ammunition actually, so they're going to be used in melee, but everyone needs to do their bit at this late stage of the battle. More arrows coming in, peppering the veterans of Osgiliath down. A close fight, a very close fight. It's actually over here as well, where I think actually it could be key. The Citadel Guard, so has he crashed? Is that what's happened here? Has he crashed? He can't have, because he's still manoeuvring his veterans of Osgiliath around on the other side. What's he doing here? What's the deal, Sin? What's going on? He's going to allow his Citadel Guard to get charged. I mean, to be fair, in melee, 1-to-1, especially the numbers being what they are, the Muhad Berserkers should soundly lose against the Citadel Guard. But it's a lot of resources being tied up over here by Y2K, which could be a difference maker. Is Sin still moving his troops, or has he crashed? I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt if he has crashed. Warns of the White Tower, stood still. Now, those veterans are eclipses. So yeah, maybe he did crash. Oof. Could that be the decisive moment in the battle? I mean, there's still going to be units that they have to deal with, the attackers, and by the time they go through what's left of Eclipse's army, they may not have the capability to do that. Especially seeing as one of those units is a unit of Wardens of the White Tower, which are 47 strong. And this Gondorian line continues to hold, and I think in this battle we have seen the Gondorian battle lines at their finest. When supported by their archers, they are rock solid in this sort of situation. And fair play to them. Because, I mean, Harad are the sort of faction which Gondor can potentially have issues against in melee, with all of the savage attacking power that they do have, but ultimately Harad also are weak to Gondor in the sense that Gondor's archers can really go to town on them. Meanwhile, Axemen of the Sarnak, I mean, to be fair, Sin's units are still performing a valuable service, slowing down Y2K's progress up this hill. And there goes Eclipse's general, fighting on the front line. Yeah, I think this is it though. I think the quality, like, Y2K, he may be able to overwhelm this unit of Citadel Guard over here with his Trollmen and his Berserkers and the Corsair Blackguards. They might be able to do that. But I think ultimately, even if they do, like, there's Wardens of the White Tower, even with Sin's units sort of vacant at the moment, there's still units that they're going to have to deal with in melee. Nara and Iron Royal Guard trying to close in from the side, but they're only going to be able to do this for so long, because on the way over are the Wardens of the White Tower from Tundra's Fox, who will undoubtedly engage against them. Ooh. That might not be the best of ideas. They needed those men on the front line. Muhad Berserkers are routing, Belagair Archers are not. I mean, they're going to try and shoot, but at this point I think it is going to be one last spit in the eye before this attack ultimately fails, and DOL ERGOTH remains in Gondorian hands. Yeah, they're going to come in, and again, not so much on the charge, but in sustained melee. This is a fight which is definitely going to favour the Wardens. They're going to try and get into a better position to engage, not allow themselves to be surrounded, which is fair enough. Inarius' Blackguards have avoided engaging with Sin's Citadel Guard. I think that's true of the Trollmen as well. Yeah, they're on their way over. They've completely circumvented the Trollmen. There goes Inarius' general. Umbar, to be fair, won't be as subject to the mass routing problems that Harad would be at the loss of their general, because a lot of Umbar's units are lock morale, of course. But ultimately that just means they're going to stand and die rather than stand and win the battle. These Blackguards still have ammo? They do. Again, more damage to be done. They're going to have rear charge here, the Warns of the White Tower, which is a nice fair play move. They're going to charge in and, well, they're going to do no damage. The Muhad Berserkers not going to be sufficient to take on units like the Wardens. Of course, our Blackguards being run off. Nimlothian Honor Guard at this point, who have worked their way around. It's been a long trek for them, but yeah, I mean, at this point it's going to be consolation kills only for the forces of evil. A good siege though. Early on, all the momentum with the attackers, as was expected. I think that is the idea behind the scenario. The city is always going to be a losing battle, sort of a fighting retreat through its streets to try and get up to the noble quarter up here. And then once that happens, the Gondorians can really dig in and make life difficult for the attackers, and that's exactly what happened. I think this battle was there for the attackers to win, to be honest with you. A little bit more cohesion between the attacks, a little bit, wiser use of the ranged resources over here, javelins from the side, etc. A little bit of patience on the other side, but I would have made the same mistake over there, to be fair. And also more urgency for trying to deal with units like the Rangers through the middle. The middle was always going to be a tough one. It was always going to be the sacrificial lambs. But still, improvement could have been there. And with all of those things being done, I think the attackers would have won this battle. Of course, our Blackguards throwing those javelins into the back of Sin's soldiers. Sin the Absent. Of course, they're going to die off. Trollmen of Harad being killed at this point. Might as well go up to ×2 speed, to be honest with you. Muhad Berserkers are routing. The locked morale nature of the Umbar troops, allowing them to stand and fight for that much longer, but surrounded by other pikemen. Guards of Osgiliath. When I say other pikemen, it's the Sentinels, isn't it? The pikes, the Royal Guard are the Archer Spearmen hybrids. Balagar Archers. Now re-engaging on the front line, but they're going up against Nimlothian Honor Guard, so again, they will re-engage only to die. And to be fair as well, Balagar Archers are not locked morale, so they probably will rout. Well, they will certainly rout before they fight to the death in melee against Nimlothians. Onto the White Tower. Victory seems certain. Wild. And Umbar, the last player left standing. Not too surprising, given the nature of Umbar as a faction in comparison to Harad. Much more resilient. Morale tends to hold itself together much better. Corsair Blackguards. I don't think the Corsair Blackguards are locked morale. They don't classify themselves as Black Numenorians, certainly as Corsairs, so they probably shouldn't be locked morale. But they are standing and fighting for quite a long time under range fire and in melee with Wardens of the White Tower, so what do I know? Maybe they are. It's possible. I mean, who is going to fall first? Are the Corsair Blackguards going to die off, or will the Belagairs rout? There's definitely more of the Belagairs. With Veterans of Osgiliath coming in from the rear, Corsair Blackguards should die off entirely first. They're only shaken as well, they're not wavering. Blackguards? Yeah, they're gone. They're doomed. And that, of course, leaves the final engagement over here. Nimlothian Honor Guard, of course, brilliant at holding the line. Probably again one of the unseen heroes of that defence in the middle. Fountain Guard, very key for the Gondorian efforts as well. Shaken, wavering, and now they're going to rout. And victory will be Gondor's. Well, clear is maybe a little bit much. I mean, the loss of life on both sides was catastrophic. But yeah, very close. 3%, which for a 5v3 siege is a very, very healthy margin indeed, especially considering the early pressure. Keys for Gondor, of course, the Rangers in the middle would have racked up a monumental kill count, as I'm sure we shall see when we go through the kill counts for both sides, well, for the Gondorians anyway. And also the Fountain Guard. I think the Fountain Guard, their holding power across all of the fronts in this particular battle was incredibly important. The Gondorian archers in general, of course, effective against the Haradrim. As for the attackers, for the reasons I said, they could have won this battle, I think. You know, the three, it was obviously, it's set up for it to be a difficult final position to take against the Gondorians, but I think a little bit more patience from BMK and Froggy. A little bit more urgency through the middle to try and deal with the Rangers, because just sitting there and taking it was definitely not the right thing to do in the end. And also a wiser use of the supporting units. Maybe, you know, I think he saved them a little bit too long in Arius and Y2K over here. Saved the archer ammunition and javelin ammo a little bit too long. Held onto it for too long. If they'd used it earlier, they could have made more holes in the Gondorian line and started to run over them. Of course, with Sin's crash, I can only assume that's what it was. It maybe would have been a little harsh if that had actually happened, because then if they had started to run over the defences and Sin wasn't able to react, it would have skewed the result of the battle somewhat. But as a result, Sin crashing didn't actually affect the battle all that much. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day. Umbar did very well in terms of kills. I mean, in terms of quality, clearly they were the strongest of the attacking armies. Resilient as well, so they were able to withstand more punishment in melee. And early on, they were the ones to make the first forays into the settlement also. Some of the Haradrim armies doing better than others. I think Froggy was the one that only got 673 kills, because obviously he got... In the city, he was the one to get focused down the most, and then he was playing more of a supporting role to BMK on the other side, which I think BMK probably got the most kills for the Haradrim armies, purely because he seemed to make the most progress over here. I mean, it was definitely a more chaotic fight, which would have favoured evil. If this had just been a little bit further into the fight, it could have been more decisive, but we shall never know now. And as for the other two, similar amounts of kills, which is not bad if that is Infinity 7 and Y2K. Then it's not bad kill count, considering the fact that they were the ones in the slaughtering grounds in the middle, primarily, Infinity 7 especially. But let's see what did the damage for Gondor, as if we don't already know. So yeah, obviously Nimlothian Honor Guard, Fountain Guard, you know, really shoring up the infantry line. It's so difficult when Gondor are allowed to dig in, and you don't have an immediately obvious way of dealing with units like the Fountain Guard. Just trying to tackle them head on is extremely difficult to do efficiently, because they're so good from the front. Normally you have to try and sort of collapse from the sides of the lines, which the attackers were trying to do, but they couldn't really with the support that Gondor had. Lots of kills, of course, across all the units. Marksmen of Caer Andros doing very well. Archers across the board doing decently. The Ravenhelm, some of them got caught in the city, so it's not too surprising to see lower counts. Catapult, doing well, actually, in the end. Surprisingly high amount of kills, actually, for the Catapult, considering I only saw a few shots from it. But still, not bad. Not bad at all. Gondor Infantry, some of them again got caught in the settlement. Some of them were holding on to the front line as well alongside the other units, but lots of healthy amounts of kills there. Actually, the Catapult, yeah, it was 450. Ravenhelm, yeah. Wild amount of kills there. Yeah, so, you know, the Rangers breaking 1,000 kills, like I suspected. 1,382 kills on the Athelian Rangers. Perfect shot. You know, lightly armoured targets as well to scythe their way through. Very, very nice indeed. The rest of Sin's army, though, less impressive, I suppose, in many ways. I mean, down here, there's a lot of kills. Veterans of Osgiliath doing well. More ranged units, and then obviously the Fountain Guard as well, really propping everything up for Gondor. But a lot of his units were also caught in the settlement, which kind of explains the lower kill count up this side. So yeah, definitely makes a decent amount of sense, that. Over here, Captain Am here, which can only be Tundra's Fox, I imagine. Again, healthy kill counts for him all around, only a few units getting a lower amount of kills, but then that's to be expected because he was the one that wasn't caught in the city. Wands and Minas Ithil, probably the disappointment here, but then they did get focused by Demons of the Desert, so perhaps not too surprising there for them. Gondor Infantry also not doing so well, but the rest of his army doing well as well. So like I said, Fountain Guard, Rangers, Archers in general, the MVPs here for Gondor as they held on to DOL ERGOTH. And yeah, very nice map, very nice scenario from Eclipse, and this is the sort of thing we're probably going to see a lot more of now in this hotfix with the tools re-available. I think that's probably alongside the mechanical improvements, should we say, to make things a little bit more stable, but that's something that really only affects me, I suppose, as well as maybe a couple of other people. aside from that, I think the reintroduction of being able to build sort of custom scenarios and custom maps a little bit more easily is probably the best thing for the hotfix, because it means that new maps, a steady stream of new content is going to be far more likely here, which is going to make this version of the game a lot more enjoyable from my perspective playing the previous one, because the previous one we were getting to the point where I was having to do the same maps over and over again, because no new maps could be made and a large portion of some of the Númenórean settlements were broken, so it kind of limited what could be done to an extent. But yeah, definitely a big improvement on the last version of the game. Next up should be, from a Total War perspective anyway, a Silmarillion Total War replay, because I have a scenario. I was actually meant to play in it, but unfortunately I was busy downloading it, and it took about 2 hours for the damn thing to unpack and overwrite the old version, so you know, it is what it is. But yeah, that will be a Silmarillion replay next from a Total War perspective. Obviously Mountain Blade is out. I still haven't quite decided what I'm going to do, because again, like I said, the thing with the Mountain Blade campaign is it's very similar to a Total War campaign in the sense that it's very long form content, which even if the first few episodes were good and did well, over time YouTube doesn't really reward that kind of content, at least not if you're a channel the size of mine. You kind of need to be a big channel if you're going to get away with doing that. The other thing that I could potentially do with regards to that is maybe stream, but again, I'm not really I have no experience with streaming and I don't really know where to begin, so if I'm going to do that I'll probably need to enlist the help of a couple of people to actually get me started, but it is definitely one of those things that I could look into, I suppose. It's more likely to work out from a streaming perspective than anything else, and I guess now with everything being the way that it is, now would be the time, if any, for me to actually give streaming a bit of a go. But that's something that I can think about on my own time, I suppose. For the time being, Silmarillion will be probably be the next piece of content you see regardless. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.